the
We Got It
podcast. And welcome back. We're so happy to have you here with us this week. It's nice to be back in the living room, just chatting with you, Jonah.
Yeah, comfier.
Yeah, it's very, very comfy. The dining room offered some nice, logistical advantages, but cozy wins out, man, especially this time of year. If you aren't familiar with the We Got It podcast, my name is Abby, and over there is that handsome man, Jonah, my husband. And we are just Spartan fans who are a little bit probably too obsessed. So we figured, why not? Just like everybody else, start a podcast and start yapping about it. In all seriousness, the We Got It podcast exists really just because of the encouragement of a friend. Jonah and I love yapping about Spartan sports. And I think in a lot of our conversations, it just came up how belittling or alienating it can be, especially I feel like to be a woman who's a fan of a sports team. If you don't know every single detail or you don't know exactly what's going on with the team, it feels very challenging to jump into those conversations with any sort of credibility. So we're here really just for all Spartan fans to let you know you are part of the Spartan family and the community. And if you don't know all those things, that's great. You're welcome here. If you want to know more, we try to break things down in a way that is a little bit easier for fans of all walks to join in. Yeah, feel like that's a good description.
Yeah, I do.
Anything that you would add there?
We Got It podcast is an official podcast of Spartans Illustrated.
Heck yeah.
We can't do a lot of what we're able to do without the support of them. So if you haven't already, please check out SpartansIllustrated.com. Check them out on socials for basically everything you need when it comes to Michigan State coverage regarding athletics. If you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Spotify, continue to support us. We really appreciate it.
And we're always happy to hear from you. You can always, comment on any of our social media channels. Drop a comment down below on wherever you're listening to this episode right now, or feel free to email us at thewegotitpodcast@gmail.com. All right, now that we've got housekeeping out of the way, there's just a lot to cover. We had a couple of basketball games this week. We had tons of just general MSU news, football related, non-football related, and then we have a couple other, non-revenue necessarily generating sport updates for you as well. So we'll get into all of it. I feel like, the most pressing thing yesterday, Michigan State men's basketball unfortunately picked up their first loss of the season. But man, was it a smackdown, drag-out battle against Duke's Blue Devils. Gosh, I hate losing to them.
Not fun.
So much.
Yeah.
So much.
Super entertaining game, I'd say.
Yeah.
Really back and forth the whole game. I think the largest lead of the game for either team was 6 points, and that was early in the first half. Duke had the lead. Michigan State had a couple 5-point leads in the second half. Duke ultimately won 65-60. Really low scoring, great defense from both teams against a Duke team coming into this game averaging almost 90 points a game. And they've also, like Michigan State, played a lot of quality opponents. So holding Duke to 65 points is a huge win. Really
a moral
kept them
victory.
And I wouldn't say it's a moral victory. I think that's the sign that Michigan State's defense translates against elite teams.
Yes.
And it's going to be something that has an impact on the rest of their season. So I wouldn't say that's just a moral victory. Michigan State's defense is very, very good. One of the best in the country.
Isn't a moral victory the definition of still doing better in one area but losing the game overall?
No, I feel like a moral victory is spinning a loss into a good thing.
Okay, that's fair.
Where it's
losing, losing to Duke's never a good thing. Screw that. I never want to.
Right. I think a moral victory would be oh man, we kept this game close. We have room to improve. This is only going to help us in the season. Maybe this loss will help us.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody as a fan or inside the locker room or Tom Izzo is viewing this loss in that nature.
Yeah. It's easy to say this in hindsight, but maybe this is an unpopular opinion, I think I would have given up all 3 other wins against Kentucky, UNC, and Arkansas to beat Duke.
I don't think so. Yeah. I'd rather have
Maybe
those
that's
3
just my
stored up.
recency bias that's in there, but gosh, I hate losing to them. I mean, while we're on the topic of like positives from that game, I mean, held freaking Cam Boozer to 0 points in that first half. Unfortunately, he seemed to make up for it in the second half. Really capitalized on Michigan State's offense just stalling out. And there's no way that you were going to hold him scoreless through a whole game. I mean, obviously, Duke came out at halftime, figured out some ways to get the ball in his hands in ways where he could really make an impact. And it's just, yeah, you just can't, unfortunately, I think, maintain that level of perfection against someone as talented, as much as I hate to say it, as he
Mm-hmm.
is. So that was just like a major, major win. One of the things that you and I have kind of been maybe not disagreeing about, but like discussing since the game yesterday was just our shooting,
Mm-hmm.
which I think you said, right, we shot somewhere around 40% from
Yeah,
3.
36 from 3. I think we're 8 of 22.
So about 40% from the field and as well.
Less, I think it was like 33,
Yeah.
34 from the field as a
Yeah.
whole. Yeah.
Which is really interesting to know. And I don't have a ton of data on this, but something my sister and I were talking about. Gosh, we got to have her on the podcast sometimes, guys. She just puts me to shame. Was saying like when we can hold other teams to shooting about 35% or less overall, we get the win. And that was, maybe it was 36%, something like that. That was the case with the wins over Arkansas, UNC, and Kentucky. And unfortunately, Duke kind of reversed that on us this time around. And that's the thing that I think is most concerning to me. And I know that you would argue, like, hey, we actually didn't shoot that poorly. Like, that's still not a
Mm-hmm.
horrible average. However, Kurtang went 0 for 5, who is a number 2, a shooting guard. Trey Fort had
1 bucket, I think.
yeah, I was going to say not much more than that. Jordan Scott, who ended up getting a lot of minutes at that position in the game, actually knocked down 2 threes. We'll come back to him because I have a lot of good things to say. But we were what? You said 5 for 15 for layups?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so some of it is pure like jump shot, and some of it is just not finishing our freaking shots. I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like this has been the case the whole season so far. Whenever we're missing, we're short. Whenever we're missing, we're short. I feel like that was the case last season as well. I don't know who the shooting coach is at Michigan State or if that's a responsibility that's held by multiple people. And there's a point where it's like, yeah, at some point shots are going to fall, right? We saw that during, what was it, the Kentucky game, that shots were just,
Mm-hmm.
we actually started draining some threes. But also, I don't know that we can just like live and die by the premise that like, oh, shots will fall. Like maybe that's something we can actually work on. Maybe we don't have like the greatest shooters out there, but can we make them? Like that's just something I don't understand.
Yeah, I think maybe what we need to do is define what we mean by shooting. Because I think if we went into this
Okay.
game and said that Michigan State was going to shoot 8 of 22 from 3, we'd pretty much all be like, that's probably good enough to win.
Yeah.
Like, and some, like against Arkansas, they had 1 made 3. Against UNC, they had 5 made 3s. Like
Yeah.
having 8 and shooting above your season average, like I don't really think it was the outside shot that was the issue for Michigan State on Saturday. A lot of it was finishing around the basket, which haven't really been issues for
Yeah.
the Spartans this year. And I feel like something I noticed, especially in that second half, when Michigan State got several of Duke's big men in foul trouble.
We like stopped going hard in the paint.
Yeah, I know. Even like
I don't understand that.
When Jackson Kohler would have the ball, he would kind of fade away a little bit, avoid that contact, especially when Duke's bigs had to play a little bit more timid in the paint. They couldn't play as physical and aggressive because they didn't want to pick up their 4th or 5th foul. And I think in those instances, you just need to have that confidence in your ability. And even if you don't make the shot, you might be drawing that foul, which could be huge in that game. So that's why, like, when we talk about the shooting, I don't necessarily think that was the concern for me. Obviously, I think the production out of the two guard spot is kind of a different conversation.
Yeah.
But Kohler hasn't really shot that poorly from the paint this season. I mean, Jeremy Fears just had a really poor shooting
Yeah.
night. I mean, from all three levels. A thing that he's shot pretty well from all three levels this year, and getting 0 for 12 from him on this night. You're not going to win too many games when your point guard's 0 for 12.
Well, and I guess that's maybe more what I'm talking about. It's not necessarily shooting percentage. And I think if you listen to my question, it's like, what, we don't have these quote unquote hot shooters on our team, but why can't we make them? Like, this is basketball. You should be able to shoot the ball, in my opinion, if you are playing at the D1 level. And so if you don't have that, we should be able to develop that. And I know Tom Izzo's talked about that with Jeremy Fears. Like, we've obviously seen that developing in him. Being able to shoot off of the pass. Now he's working on more of that like transition shot off the dribble. Kurtang, Trey Fort, like that two guard position. Like, how have we not gotten shooting down? And maybe it's just a priorities thing, right? Like, you think about Michigan State's mantra, shooting is nowhere in it, right? It is all about you are locking down on defense to create yourself offensive opportunities, essentially, especially transition baskets. But at some point, like, defense, good defense can only carry you so far if you can't make buckets. And so I guess that's more of my concern, is like, why do we keep letting this be an area of, outside of Jace Richardson last year and a couple of times like Jaden Akins and Trey Holloman going off? Like, we weren't like a hot shooter team last year either. We had like one of the worst 3-point, or at least that's what people like to say. We had a not great 3-point percentage for a majority of the season last year. Like, I get that you can't be good at everything,
right?
But shooting seems like something, especially from your shooting guards, that should be like getting improved on the reg.
Yeah, and I guess that would go back to my question. What specifically do you mean by shooting? Are you meaning like jump shooting, or just like making baskets in general?
Both,
because I think
probably too much to ask for. But I mean, I do think like jump shot, like from Kurtang, from Trey Fort, like it's there. It's right on the money so often, but it's just either too short. Like, I don't understand what it is about the mechanics that they can't get the ball to go in on a semi-regular, basis.
That's what I feel like.
Maybe it's too early in the
I'd
season
maybe
to
push
be
back a little bit, because like I said,
fair.
I think the conversation around the two guard position is a conversation to have and a concern.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about specifically Duke, like shooting nearly 40% from three on decent volume. I feel like wasn't really why we lost that game. It was finishing around the basket, like layups, which I guess I wouldn't consider quote unquote shooting.
Yeah. But I think part of that too, and okay, so maybe we're just going into this conversation now, is with the two guard and even Jeremy too. Like, one of my critiques of him is that they struggle so much to drive to the basket and make a layup. I mean, honestly, besides Divine, I could probably count on two hands the number of times that I have seen Jeremy Fears Jr., Kurtang, Jordan Scott, Trey Fort drive to the hoop.
Yeah.
So far this season. I mean, Divine's like one of our only players who's a threat, which I honestly have kind of loved that combo of having him and Fears in at the same time. Obviously, for like short periods, I don't think it's great super long term, but yeah, I don't know. I think maybe that's really what it comes down to, is, the two guard position just being something that needs some significant development. I think if we want to see this team make a deep run in March, and I think something that we're just really missing, having lost Akins and Richardson last season. Something that we talked about, he wouldn't have necessarily been like a two guard, but losing Caleb Glenn this summer just really, I think, limits our perimeter shooting. And this is where it ties back into Duke is just yet again like struggling against that zone in the second half. And I think in order to do well against the zone, it's more than just that overall shooting percentage. It's how you can actually knock down shots against that zone from the perimeter to open stuff up in the paint. And I think that's part of why Kohler was getting, and Cooper like more soft in the paint. Tom Izzo talked about that. I don't understand why in his post-game presser he was saying like we had exactly what you're saying. We had foul trouble on Duke's bigs. Kohler kept going away instead of going hard to the hoop. But I think some of that is just like adjusting to that zone. Like there's a lot of factors to it. I'm sorry if I'm just all over the place.
No,
it's just all so interconnected. Like you can see how our lack of experience against a zone, which is something you and I will always disagree over, and not being able to adjust to that quickly, combined with inconsistent, maybe even if the percentage is good, inconsistent perimeter shooting, which then led to, I think, us going less hard in the paint. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I feel like, and maybe this is just me being stubborn about it, which probably is the case.
If you haven't noticed, we're both pretty darn stubborn.
But like obviously Michigan State has dismantled Kentucky and UNC already this year.
Yeah.
They beat a good Arkansas team who just smacked Louisville. And I think here's like, if you look at the Duke game, Tom Izzo talked about this in his press conference. They allowed 4 offensive rebounds for Duke when Duke was shooting free throws.
Yeah.
That led to 3 Duke baskets, including 2 threes. And he said they keep track of that stat basically on how many rebounds they allow when the opponent is shooting free throws.
When like we should have advantage. You have 4 guys on that line compared to their 2.
Going back to last year, before this game, they'd only allowed 1 of those. And this game they allowed 4.
Across all previous games?
Yes.
Wow.
So that's something that is not stereotypical of Michigan State. I mean, give credit to Duke. I mean, they're a big physical team.
Oh my gosh, their length is crazy too.
But you take those away, and you have Michigan State make 2 more of their 2 of the 10 layups they missed, and Michigan State wins this game by 6 or 7 points, and we're 9-0. Nobody's really having a ton of
you take away
concerns.
Their offensive rebounds on their free throws, and you add Cohen Carr hitting 50% of his free throws. That would have been nice.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think
that's a win for Michigan State too.
The margins in that game, despite Michigan State not having a great offensive night, were so small. And I just feel like Duke is, I can see you're wanting to chime in, but let me finish here. Duke, I think, is a top 2, if not 3 team in the country. And you take away just those couple of plays that aren't stereotypical of Michigan State and even this team in general. Like, this has been a good 2-point shooting team this year as far as inside the paint, and it's been a great rebounding team, especially on free throws. So you take away those 2 uncharacteristic things about this game, and Michigan State wins this game by, I think, 6 or 7 points, and we're having a lot different conversation. Obviously, it doesn't mean that Michigan State doesn't have some weaknesses in some areas that they definitely need to improve upon. I just disappointed with the loss, but I don't feel like I'm very discouraged on the season outlook because of the loss.
No, and I feel like that's where I'm getting a little cranky because I feel like you're throwing me under the bus for like opening up that conversation about shooting and about the 2 guard. And by no means am I sitting over here like waving the white flag like there go our March tournament runs because we lost to Duke. Like not at all. Like I freaking hate losing to Duke, but I also see how we did so many things well in that game. And like you said, how there were a couple of instances that just really were not characteristic of how we have played the previous 8 games. So I'm going to put a disclaimer in, like, take it easy there, sir. I'm just having a conversation about this stuff. Because, yes, like you said, Kohler, Cooper, that's something I think we talked about a ton after the very first game of the season, Colgate. It was like the amount of points in the paint that we scored compared to them. That was something that they talked about after the UNC game. Like the goal of the game was controlling the paint, and they did that. That's something that Tom has been really focused on this season. So you're right. It was very odd that we weren't finishing shots around the rim and that we were struggling to get those offensive or those defensive rebounds when they were shooting free throws. However, like, credit to Duke. That was probably one of, I mean, we faced some physical teams, but just like the length of Boozer, the length of that whole team, the physicality of it just really was challenging. So, like you said, they are as much as I hate to say it, like top team, and that I think we're going to see make a very strong performance late in the season. And in a lot of ways, like, it's good for us to get that wake up call and that reality and to expose some of those pressure points, right? Like to show, hey, even though you did this really well against some other teams, it's still an area that if you are not locked in, if you're not locked in on free throws, if you are not locked in on rebounding, if you are not locked in on going up hard to the hoop and ensuring that that ball is going in the basket, like, you're going to get those points taken away.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe where I would just say with this conversation is Michigan State is elite in so many ways on this season. And I think the shooting ability really comes down to needing to get more production from Kurtang and Trey Fort. Because I think that really, like, getting that production from those guys, like, again, if we got 2 combined threes from those guys.
Didn't even have to be threes, 2 combined outside shots.
Yeah, that's, again, this is, we're probably having a very different conversation. And the fact that they were, I think, Fort and Tang were combined 1 for 8. And that's been, obviously there's been some outliers, but that's been a pretty consistent theme, is there's not a lot of production from those guys. And I think that really, that lack of production from the 2 guard position what's holding back this team from being considered one of the very best teams in the country. And they're already kind of in that conversation without that. But if they can just find some combination, they can unlock something in those guys' games. We can maybe talk about this too, but maybe it's putting a different guy in that position. I think that unlocks another level for this Michigan State team to be at that upper top tier in the country.
Yeah. Before we move on more to like what we think is coming next and maybe having that conversation about who might go in that 2 position, I think one other thing that was just uncharacteristic this game, and we also had the Big Ten season opener this week against Iowa, which was just a big old smackdown, like, welcome to the Big Ten. Because for those of you who aren't aware, Iowa's coach was, first season coach in the Big Ten. He was Drake's coach last season and brought a lot of Drake's players with him. So it really is, yes, it's a Big Ten team, but it's a, very new to the Big Ten team. Where was I going with this? Oh, talking about things that were uncharacteristic of Michigan State. Cam Ward didn't play at all in the game against Iowa. He had a brace on that. Was it right wrist? And then ahead of the game against Duke, Izzo came out and said, Cam Ward will be playing and expected to play significant minutes. Cam Ward did not play significant minutes. And I don't know if that had to do with the hand, if it had to do with just he didn't really make an impact on the first few minutes that he did see the court. I think he came in and almost immediately committed a foul, just, had a little bit more difficulty. So that was something too, that we've actually seen him be very consistent in the games that he's gotten significant minutes. So that was just another factor that just felt kind of off against Duke. So you have another game where you actually have Cam Ward contributing, where you have another strong guy who's able to finish around the rim, who's able to draw fouls, who's had some pretty nice slams, somebody who can actually make sure the ball goes in the hoop in the paint. That's another thing that I think just went against Michigan State as far as Duke goes. Jordan Scott, man. I want to take a minute to have a whole conversation about him. And maybe that's not fair and I'm just biased. I don't know why. I love that kid.
No, why is that bad?
I don't know. I feel very biased towards him. One, because he just seems like genuinely one of the kindest, like most, yeah, just what a great
Yeah.
soul. Anytime you interact with him, um, up until the last 2 minutes, had quite nearly a flawless game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was doing everything you want him to do, diving on the floor, hustling after rebounds, knocked down a couple of threes. I think my neighbors at the end of the block heard me screaming when Scott hit that second three. Like, just, he does exactly what Tom Izzo
Mm-hmm.
wants, like through and through. Don't you
No,
agree?
yeah, I would totally. I mean, it doesn't always show up in the box score, but he does all of those little things so well. His energy's there, defense, rebounding, effort.
He's one thing that really stood out to me too against Duke was just how often he was disrupting passes,
Mm-hmm.
getting his hands in there. His head is constantly on a swivel when he's on defense. He is on his toes, like literally like jumping around, like keeping himself ready for what's coming. And that's why it's just so unfortunate that it felt like kind of the nail in MSU's coffin against Duke. Was just that really dumb foul from him on that 3-point shot that was missed that allowed Duke to go up 5 with what, like
A minute
a
left.
minute
Yeah.
left. Jeremy Fears had been guarding that player well, probably caused him to, miss that 3-point shot. And then Jordan Scott just, I feel like it's like a classic true freshman
Mm-hmm.
mistake, like just high stakes, high adrenaline, just comes flying and hits him like way after the ball is released. It's just an easy foul for the refs to call. And of course, he goes in and, unlike Michigan State, hits all 3 of his free throws. And it just sucks because it's like, I feel like that Jordan Scott had played so many excellent minutes of basketball, and then it's like one small mistake. Like, that's another thing,
Yeah.
right? Like, one small mistake was honestly potentially the difference in that game,
Mm-hmm.
too. It's not guaranteed, but we were only down 2 at that point with a minute left. They had just missed a shot. MSU gets a rebound there. Like, pretty soon it's tie, potentially tie game
Yeah.
or even up 1 Michigan State, depending on what happens. So just brutal. And despite that mistake, he's the one that you and I have kind of been talking about. Like, will we see Scott starting at the 2 next week against Penn State?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good conversation to have for a lot of reasons. I think, um, obviously, he's a guy in some ways similar to Tang and Fort, who has struggled from uh, with shooting. But obviously, you saw him knock down a couple big shots
And
in big
struggle from
moments.
shooting with a lot less opportunities. He's taken a lot less shots than
Right.
Fort and Tang
But
have.
still, like, I think he's a guy that you maybe would have expected to see some of those open
Yeah.
shots get knocked down
Just have
from
a
him.
limited sample size with him so far.
But hitting those shots in those some of the biggest moments so
Yeah.
far in this season. And I think this coaching staff and this team has a lot of confidence in his ability to shoot with all the things that he does defensively, rebounding, energy wise, that we really don't see as much
Mm-hmm.
from Tang and Fort. Like, at the very least, if you insert him into that starting 2 position, you're going to get better defensively.
Or at least the same defensive effort. You know what I mean? Or
I'm confident to say
yeah,
better
I think
defensive
it's
effort.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely better rebounding, more energy, more
Mm-hmm.
length, more athleticism, and so even if the shooting isn't necessarily better, which I think it could be,
You're
I
getting either the same or a plus in every other area.
and then I think when you then if you have Tang and Fort come in, there isn't as much pressure on
Mm.
them to have to do all of those things. Besides, hey, go in and make a couple shots,
Mm-hmm.
stretch the floor a little bit, open things up for this offense.
Be a fresh set of legs and lungs in there and like
Um,
giving these guys a break.
but yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if, I mean, Izzo definitely hinted after the game that there is, quote unquote, a quarterback controversy at that
Mm-hmm.
number, or the 2 guard
Yeah.
position. And from all the things that we have seen so far from Scott, even though it hasn't been consistent shooting,
He's
I
been
think
consistent in every single other
I
area.
think it's worth giving it a
Mm-hmm.
shot, especially it's a game against Penn State where we should be able to handle
Mm-hmm.
business, even though it's on the road, like especially with the Penn State game and the last 3 non-conference games. I think you kind of have an opportunity to kind of see what that would look like going into the rest of conference play, and maybe give some time for Fort to get some more confidence, for
Mm-hmm.
Tang to develop a little bit more. Uh, but I think that could be an interesting move that could actually give Michigan State a little bit more versatility, um, add additional defense to that starting lineup, and maybe there would be some trade-offs. You wouldn't have that energy guy coming off the bench anymore. But if you increase his minutes, um, maybe you don't even have to start him,
Yeah.
but start playing him some more minutes, especially at that 2, and kind of see how that changes
Mm-hmm.
things for this offense.
Yeah. I mean, I can't see why his minutes with how many he got against Duke would get reduced moving forward
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. Like, again, outside of that one bad mistake that I'm sure in the moment he knew he shouldn't have done, like, he did everything else right. And I think, not to read too much into it because it's 2 made shots, but the fact that he was able to knock down those shots with such a high pressure game, like high pressure environment. I don't know, like maybe that was just a fluke, but it could also be a signifier that like he's got some ice in his veins and can do what needs to be done in big moments.
And that's like, if you go back to like before the season, like I don't think many people thought that Scott would contribute a ton
Yeah.
this year, especially in the ways that he's contributing. I think a lot of people would have said, hey, maybe he'll come in some spot minutes and knock
Yeah.
down some shots. And obviously that part of it hasn't really happened this season, but I think that was kind of the expectation with him going into the season. And now that maybe there's some increased confidence in that shot, hitting those against Duke, maybe that unlocks another part of Scott that we maybe would have expected going into this season, and allows him to potentially step into that 2 guard position. And like I said, kind of add something to this offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like it's still so early in the season. Today is December 7th. Like there's so much that's going on. If you think back to where Michigan State was at, beginning of the season to now last year, like Richardson probably wasn't, for people who didn't know the family or weren't intimately familiar with like whose dad, who Richardson's dad was or anything like that. Like no one I think had huge expectations for Richardson, especially at this point in the season. I think we were like, oh wow, this kid could end up being good. And then there he goes off to the NBA after 1 year. Like I'm just saying, I think the sky is the limit for a lot of these players
Mm-hmm.
still. And by no means am I like shutting the door on Tang or on Fort. Not at all. That's why I'm saying, like, is this something that we can like develop? Because I think both of those guys have shown flashes that they can do it. Like they can play at a Big Ten level, they can
Mm-hmm.
play at a national level.
I can knock down shots.
Yeah, exactly. Um, but how lucky are we, I guess, to have like that many personnel who could slot into that spot? And I'm like really excited to see them develop. And I don't mean to be salty. If I am, it's just purely because I hate Duke with a burning passion. All right. I think that about wraps up our segment
Yeah.
on Michigan State basketball. We've got a long time without them. I don't know what
No, a
I'm
whole
gonna
week.
do with myself this week. Yeah, whole week before they face off against Penn State. I think it's 1:00 again next Saturday, December 13th. Is that game at home?
It's on the road.
On the road. So we're in Happy Valley, hanging out with the Nittany Lions next week. I think it's a good time to transition in a halftime report.
Yeah.
Your women's basketball team has been on their own week break, so we have not seen them since their win over Clemson last week in the Bahamas. But they take on their first Big Ten opponent, Wisconsin, this evening, December 7th. So be sure to get you caught up on how they're doing with conference play next week. Another little heads up, women's gymnastics is about to start. If you tuned into our season last year, we got super into the women's
Yeah.
gymnastics team. They're so fun to watch. I am just sport of gymnastics blows my mind. So for those of you who are around, they're hosting their annual green and white meet, which is free for anybody to attend at Jennison Fieldhouse. That'll be taking place next Saturday, December 13th at 1 p.m. So if you're not a big men's basketball fan, or even if you are and you just love women's gymnastics, be sure to head over there and support those women. And then another big matchup that happened this week was men's ice hockey.
Yeah, men's ice hockey had their first series of the season against Michigan, who is ranked number 1 in the country right now. Michigan State is down to 3 after that series against Wisconsin, where they were swept. On Friday night, they faced Michigan at Munn Ice Arena. They dropped that game 3-0. Just an uncharacteristic performance from that offense, especially against the Michigan team that usually allows some goals. But then bounced back Saturday night in Ann Arbor to win 3-1. So picked up a very, very, very big win to split the series. And actually,
huge.
I believe that's the only time that they will travel to Ann Arbor this season, because I believe when they face Michigan later in the season, they'll get a game at Munn and then a game at Little Caesars Arena.
So kind of traveling to Michigan, but Michigan's also have to travel a bit.
Maybe that's a game where they can grab both of those. It's going to be a very interesting Big Ten season right now. Michigan's number 1, Wisconsin's number 2, Michigan State's number 3. So a lot of great hockey teams in the Big Ten. So it's going to be fascinating to see kind of how this Big Ten season plays out. But great on the Spartans to be able to get that split after a disappointing performance on Friday night.
Yeah. And one of the fun things about the hockey game this weekend, even though that game resulted in a loss, was new football coach Pat Fitzgerald was there and seemed like the time of his life. Dropped the puck at home at Munn Arena. I think at one point I saw a video of him playing the tuba or attempting to play the tuba. I don't know. I didn't hear what it sounded like, so maybe it wasn't that good. But, just very intimately involved, making his presence known. And I'm not going to say this like for good or for bad. You guys have heard us talk about a lot how we were put out by or frustrated by the lack of emotion from Jonathan Smith. Pat Fitzgerald is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
It sure seems that way. So far, he was announced, came to Michigan State on Monday? Tuesday? Did he arrive?
He arrived Tuesday morning.
This week has felt like 10 weeks in Michigan State sports and news. Holy Moses. But was at the Iowa game Tuesday night after his formal media introduction and scrum and all of the things, working the frickin' Izzo like he's been there for years, just making that place go nutty. Screaming at the Izzo, getting them pumped up on the court during one of the the timeouts. And then, it seems like really kind of doing the same thing at Munn Ice Arena on Friday night as well.
And then again on Saturday against Duke.
Yeah. Just that he is on campus and making things happen. One thing that I wanted to go back to really quick, because last week we did a segment on the transfer portal. And one thing that we learned, because we're always learning things, because I was just asking you this, oh, hey, did the transfer portal open up? Because it was my understanding that 5 days after a new coach is hired, the transfer portal opens up. However, we learned that is only the case for coaching changes that are made after January 2nd. Mm-hmm. So after that normal transfer portal opens.
Right.
So even more of a benefit for Fitzgerald is he's going to be able to work this whole December on a lot of these players. He got right to work working on the commits, because National Early Signing Day was Wednesday. And Michigan State still ended up coming away with surprisingly 16 signed recruits.
Yeah, I think they had 2 or 3 guys flip commits, and then they have one guy who's waiting till February to sign. But overall, able to really secure this class for the most part.
Which, like, maybe I'm pessimistic, but I was not expecting that at all. Like, for us to actually retain that many commits.
Yeah, and I honestly think like a lot of credit goes to Jonathan Smith in
Yeah.
this staff,
Yeah.
even if they may have known that the writing was on the wall for a lot of them continuing to recruit this
Yeah.
class. And I even kind of heard that after Jonathan Smith was fired, he continued to encourage recruits to
Wow.
sign with Michigan State. I know a lot of the coaching staff too has remained on campus.
Well, I mean, he is getting that buyout from Michigan State, so he's probably got some incentives to not piss the university off. But yes, very good on him for sure.
And too, like I said, a lot of the coaching staff remained on campus to kind of secure a lot of this staff. But a good start for Pat Fitzgerald to really keep, for the most part, this signing class intact. I mean, obviously, you look at Penn State. Obviously, they've had a coaching vacancy for a lot longer, but ended the early signing period with 2 commits,
which is like dramatically, historically, like the worst number of signed recruits for a Big Ten school for sure.
Yeah, in the early signing period, I believe. So good start for Fitzgerald, obviously getting to campus on Tuesday with all the appearances he made, media availability.
Well, yeah, and you were there for the media availability.
Work that he had to do. He was able to, I know he FaceTimed with every commit, had interactions with a lot of them, talked to themselves, their parents, to try to get them to remain committed to the Spartans.
Which frankly makes his outpouring of emotion even more impressive, because I doubt that man got more than like a couple hours of sleep a night this week.
Yeah, and like thinking about all the other things he has to do, building a staff, making appearances around
making hard
campus,
coaching decisions,
evaluating the current roster and meeting with the current team. So a lot on his plate this week. So for him to do that so quickly, definitely a positive sign.
Yeah. There have been a lot of financial developments that have happened since we talked to you guys last. Starting with, there was actual like a settled amount on what Jonathan Smith's buyout is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, they're paying him the
number
full amount.
Okay.
Near $33 million.
Woof.
Which was, I mean, expected. There wasn't really going to be a world where that was going to be negotiated or less than the 33.
Unless Jonathan Smith decided to negotiate for like a smaller lump sum versus getting that 33 mil paid out
over the 5 years.
Installments.
Yeah.
Okay.
And obviously that amount can shrink if you were to get another job. Basically, his buyout amount subtracted by his new salary would be what Michigan State would owe him.
Okay.
So there's still a chance that could not have as big of a financial impact. But quite frankly, even if they have to pay Jonathan Smith all $33 million, I'm, based off of this week's developments, not concerned about that in the slightest.
Well, okay, so then let's I'm thinking about this, trying to do it in a linear, logical way. So Jonathan Smith buyout, we know that number. Pat Fitzgerald's salary was released, which is an average rate of about $5 million a year.
It's a 5-year contract with $30 million guaranteed.
Okay.
So I think base salary year 1 is 5, but then it goes up by like 500,000 every year.
And then there's also several incentives for like winning 6 games in the season, winning 7 games in the season, making a Big Ten championship appearance, winning a Big Ten championship, making a football, playoff performance, having a certain GPA from his players, that sort of thing. So other incentives for Fitzgerald to really show up in a lot of different aspects as a coach. All right, so that's that. Jay Batt did not give anyone room to breathe. And true. Like it or not, I'm not sure if I like it or not yet, I think the man might be a little bit of a mastermind, because the amount of information bombs that he dropped on the MSU community this week was like squirrel, 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 squirrel. Okay, so have feeling a type of way about Jonathan Smith getting fired. Oh, wait, there's rumors that Pat Fitzgerald's here. Ooh, you don't like the rumors about Pat Fitzgerald, and him being named head coach. Oh, guess what? We're starting a $1 billion For Sparta initiative that's going to involve complete renovations of Spartan Stadium, Jennison Fieldhouse, changes to the Breslin Center, all this money for student athletics. Oh, you don't like the idea of $1 billion getting spent on buildings on a university campus? You can tell I have some feelings about this. Oh, guess what? Greg Billiams, as we like to call him, or Greg Williams, MSU alum and owner of.
Not MSU alum.
Really?
Not MSU
He's
alum.
not?
He's
Who's
not.
the other MSU alum that owns the Pistons?
That's Tom Gores.
Tom Gores. Wait, why the frick does Greg Williams like Michigan State so much?
Grew up in Langsburg. I believe his daughter is an MSU alum.
Okay, sorry guys.
Yeah.
I really thought that was the case. Well, anyway, Greg Billiams on Friday, they have this nice big party on the Breslin Center floor for him to announce that he is donating $401 million to student athletics. Insane. It's like the amount of numbers of money that are flying around, and part of me wonders if some of this is just to like distract from how much we're paying Jonathan Smith off, because 33 mil doesn't sound like that much when you've already got $500,000 pledged towards For Sparta and 401 million being donated by freaking Greg Williams, and all like it's just you start just like, huh, what's happening? Who's the new coach? How much money?
Yeah, it's a lot of money going around.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think it's a sign that Michigan State is going into this current era of college athletics and saying, we want to be a player. We want to be in these conversations. We want to have the best facilities for all of our sports across the country. And this isn't just our hope we have or a dream we have. No, we actually have the capital to back it up.
I'm just like laughing about how concerned I was about money when we were talking about like the NCAA sanctions and like, are we even going to be able to afford a new coach? Are we even going to be able to like afford to pay Jonathan Smith off? Again, I don't know how I feel about this much money going into college athletics when, lots of other things going on in the world that we won't get into because this is supposed to be a fun sports podcast. But also, like, it feels very gross not to acknowledge it. You know what I mean? Like, it's great, and we love Michigan State athletics. I don't know that we need to spend $1 billion on buildings, but that's probably a very unpopular opinion.
And, like, it's not like Michigan State is spending $1 billion over the next year. Like, this campaign is, like, the goal for it to be completed is 2030 something. So over the next 10 years is a lot of this money going to be.
2030 is 5 years away, honey babe.
I said 2000. It's like 2033, 2034 is when the goal is to be.
There's rumors that it's already like well over halfway. Right.
I mean, as far as raising the money, but again, they're not going to spend all that money overnight. And I think if you were to think about the size of these athletic departments, Michigan State spending $100 million a year over the next 10 years, I think that's a little bit easier to swallow, especially when you think about just how much revenue is in this sport now, too.
It's also just kind of insane.
It is an insane amount of money that's involved with college athletics now. But like, it's hard also, I think, not to get excited about the future of how this affects.
I'm just trying to acknowledge like the dual nature of like, yay, this is really fun, and like, yay, we can actually do the things that we want to do to be competitive, and also like, holy freaking crap, why do we need that much money? Of Greg Williams' donation, right? He earmarked like 250 of it.
290 million.
Sorry, 290 million for Sparta.
Yep.
Which is that initiative of like improving all of these athletic buildings on campus. You said how much was getting put into like essentially like a high yield savings account for NIL?
290 of it is going to the For Sparta initiative.
Okay.
100 million is going to Spartan Ventures, which is kind of the new independent organization that's going to be like
replace like Sparty NIL kind of, right?
more or less basically the revenue side of the athletics department,
which is what's going to help like actually pay players.
Yes.
Okay.
And so that's being added to that JBAT said kind of portfolio, which then they'll use kind of the proceeds from that account for rev share, for NIL, for kind of compensating
which
players.
We've spent a lot of time and energy talking about, like bleeding a donor base dry. Like that's going to help combat some of that. If you actually have it in, it's not just like this one-time donation. Hey, we want you to go out and get a Bryce Underwood that we're going to pay a ridiculous amount of money. It's nope, we're giving it to this organization so that it can be invested, it can grow, and the proceeds, the dividends from that can be used to pay players. It's a much more long-term solution for the direction that NIL is moving.
Yeah, it's not $100 million slush fund that they're just going to pull. Oh, we need $1 million for this player. Let's take that out of that 100. We need this. Like, this is something that's going to stay in this account. It's going to grow. It's going to be continued to invested for a sustainable model for compensating athletics across sports.
And the Spartan Ventures, sorry, there have been so many new terms that have been introduced, is like only about a month old, right? JBAT announced it.
This fall.
About a month ago, I feel
more
like.
or less.
4 to 6 weeks-ish. I'm someone who uses the term the other day very loosely, much to Jonah's chagrin. So about a month ago, JBAT announced this. So like that is another JBAT thing, right? Like this whole idea of like, hey, let's actually streamline NIL in a way that like makes sense and kind of gives the university, I'm assuming, or like the athletic department a little bit more say versus like it being completely donor driven. Is that a fair way to
and I think
about it?
I'm not exactly sure
I might need to do a little more research
it's going
how it actually
to work.
Works. Yeah.
But having it be kind of its own entity outside of the university allows for just a little bit more financial flexibility. Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily going to take any necessary pressure off of the donor base. Like they're still going to need the donors.
I'm not saying pressure. I'm saying maybe MSU gets a little bit more say in things if it's something that's like, rather than being run completely by donors, it seems like JBAT's got his paws in this Spartan Ventures thing, and it's going to help, figure out where things go.
Yeah, and I think what it does do is sets up Michigan State to be a player when it comes to compensation in the long run. And it's not just, hey, we need to raise $30 million for our football team next season, and then next year we're going to have to be asking for it again. Like it's trying to create a sustainable model where this kind of fund can continue to grow and be invested. That way they can continue to kind of pull from this amount, and it's not just getting bled dry every offseason.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And obviously something that Jonathan Smith probably would have really enjoyed having during his time here. And I'm wondering how much of that is, rumors that we've heard that he was promised more as far as resources go. So it's just another thing, like just, I feel for him. Yes, he's getting a big fat check every month. But also, like you said, like he continued to encourage players to stay at Michigan State. Like just one more thing where you really see the kind of person that Jonathan Smith is. And I'm very curious to see how Fitzgerald is going to fit into that, how he's going to work with JBAT, hopefully to optimize this new influx of cash and resources. I think this offseason, and especially the transfer portal time period, those first couple of weeks in January are going to be very telling of what kind of direction Fitzgerald is taking this team. As much as we hate it, like next year still probably isn't going to be anything to write home about. At least that's what I'm telling myself mentally. But also, like with these resources, maybe it has the chance to be more than that.
Yeah, I mean, how that remains to be seen. I mean, everything that I've seen and heard, it seems like JBAT and Pat Fitzgerald are aligned on kind of how Michigan State is moving forward. Obviously, like Fitzgerald was aware of all these developments before he took the Michigan State
Yes.
job. Like that was a part of Michigan State's pitch to him. I mean, he's talked a lot about Fitzgerald. Like he kind of understands this current landscape of college
Mm-hmm.
athletics, and to see Michigan State kind of finally being on the forefront of innovation, but then also having the resources to make that matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think there's a lot of alignment and like high level people who are on the same page on the direction of where this football program and more broadly athletics department is heading.
Right. And that's where I'm saying, like, I think that is a freaking mastermind because, we were already starting to feel this when we recorded um, early last week. I think Fitzgerald had just been announced as head coach, but now seeing all of these announcements like lined up and then knocked down like a freaking set of dominoes, like, you can't tell me there is a world in which this hasn't been getting plotted and planned for weeks. Like, I know a lot of the official statements from the university or even like questions to bat about like, have you known that you were going to fire Jonathan Smith for a long time? Like, hedged around a lot of those things and probably make it seem
Yeah.
like this hasn't been in the works for a while. But and this is literally zero insider info whatsoever. I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if that interview that Fitzgerald had on ESPN's Game Day podcast about a month ago. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he was already in talks with that then and like soft launching himself by like re-emerging from his football sabbatical.
Yeah.
That's another thing where like you're talking about, I'm starting to see, and again, proof will be in the pudding, like not trying to get too overexcited about things, where I could see where Fitzgerald could be a very smart hire for Michigan State. Like you said, understanding the landscape. And I think one of the things is like when you are in it every single day and you're having to deal with NIL as it comes, as you're having to deal with revenue sharing as it comes, if you're having to constantly adjust to transfer portal, windows and changes as it comes as a coach, like Fitzgerald has had the opportunity, maybe in a weird roundabout way, to be able to like get a bird's eye view of things, to be outside of the system when a lot of this stuff like rubber meets the road was hitting
without having to grind film every week and deal with issues in the locker room and meeting with donors and all the other things that comes with being a head football coach.
Well, and that was one of the things that he talked about a lot on ESPN's Game Day podcast was like he felt as if he's earned like a pseudo PhD because he has spent this time not being, a head college level football coach by going and actually learning from other coaches, other teams, seeing how NIL has developed, seeing how revenue sharing has developed. And so I could see a world in which like his mind has been working on a lot of things, much in the same way that I think Jay Batt's mind works on things, and how it could end up being, a really strategic alignment. Now, I think, again, the elephant in the room is something that we addressed a little bit on the podcast. And at the time, I'd just been like, I don't really know enough to have an informed opinion. I had an opinion at that point. And I think as I have done, like, I'm not lying, hours worth of research this week, because it was just something that was really important to me, especially given Michigan State's just history and hurt from sexual misconduct over the last couple of decades. Obviously, as hard and uncomfortable as it is to talk about, Michigan State's history with Larry Nassar, with Mel Tucker, with a lot of allegations and, known sexual misconduct with former football team players, with former basketball team players, like big profile names. It has been something that Michigan State has been in the media for a lot, especially during the 2010s, and rightly so. Like there were a lot of gaps in MSU's policies, in their oversight. I don't think MSU is alone in that. If you actually go and like do research on like what Title IX is, which is a statute of amendments to like U.S. Department of Education federal law that was done in the 70s. Title IX specifically is just that discrimination on the basis of gender cannot be made when accessing like any sort of educational program or activity, which is basically covers anything involved with a university. Um, so like there's this very heavy history at Michigan State, and honestly like the greater Lansing community at large, especially because of Larry Nassar being so involved in local gymnastics programs and whole high school and so many things, that I was deeply troubled that Michigan State would even entertain the notion of going after any staff member who had a whiff of being associated with sexual misconduct. Like I'm just saying, like, in no way am I pointing fingers at Fitzgerald or whatever, but just initially I was like, why are we even going there? I've spent a lot of time, like I said, this week just really deep diving into it, and learned a ton about like what actually goes on with Title IX reporting and who is responsible for doing certain things. And I feel like I've gotten to a point where I actually feel very comfortable with the Fitzgerald hire. And that's not because I feel like I have compromised what I think is important. It's more that I feel that there are a lot of holes in our systems that, because of a lot of increased awareness, are constantly getting better, is my hope. There's increased oversight, there's increased accountability for players, for coaches, for university staff members, and Michigan State probably more than any other university, or as much as any other university, like with all of the scrutiny, has made a lot of really great strides. And Fitzgerald obviously, reached a settlement with Northwestern because the reason that he was dismissed was because of this hazing scandal, where, players on his team over a multi-year period were conducting hazing rituals against primarily like freshmen and underclass football team players. A lot of them were like highly sexual in nature, very degrading in nature. And initially he was suspended and then dismissed because people said, well, Fitzgerald should have known. He should have known that this was going on because of the results of like an independent investigation. They kind of concluded like there's no reason that he shouldn't have known, which is just something that is very, very slippery to hold on to and to identify.
Yeah.
And everything that I've seen from Fitzgerald, obviously there's people out there who are really good liars, but everything that I've seen from him, everything that I have read has just really indicated like there's no proof that he actually should have known. I think he has learned a lot from this. He's come out and said that he, went on to coach his own boys high school football team. He talked a lot about in his ESPN podcast, just like how much he's working on teaching his own sons the right way to behave, how he really missed having the opportunity at Northwestern to be able to step into that situation once he learned about it and actually correct that behavior and to like dole out appropriate punishments for it. And I think that just says a lot. Maybe he's media coached a lot. He probably is. But anyway, like, you don't need my word for it. I would really encourage you to go do your own research. But just wanted to address that and kind of like revisit it. It's something that I think I'm feeling a lot more confident in the hire and confident in like the player safety, kind of moving forward.
Yeah. And I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Fitzgerald was let go prior to that private investigation finishing, a lot to do because of public scrutiny. Again, that he should have known, but once the investigation did finish, it concluded that there's no proof that he was aware of the situation. And you kind of go back to what you talked about with instances at Michigan State with football or basketball players where there was a lot of pressure, public pressure in regards to Tom Izzo and Mark D'Antonio.
Yep.
And instead of kind of succumbing to that public pressure, Michigan State kind of said, hey, no, we're going to wait until these investigations are finished.
Yeah.
When by the NCAA and the FBI, both Tom Izzo and Mark D'Antonio were absolved from any blame or mishandling of those
Yes. Yeah,
situations.
that second word is key.
Where with Northwestern, they kind of jumped the gun because of public pressure, and
Specifically
then
Northwestern's president,
had to backtrack to the point where the athletic director, after the investigation, ended up resigning because of how they handled that situation. But yeah, I think, like you said, it's important for Michigan State fans and the community to understand what happened, what Michigan State has done in light of all of these instances to improve policy, to improve reporting, and really too, like, is a completely different administration.
Oh yeah,
from top to bottom,
100%.
from the president to the
Yes.
athletic director to the board of trustees to these compliance offices to the Title IX office. Like, it is a complete different regime in pretty much every single aspect outside of Tom Izzo.
Yes. In the last 10 years. Yeah. Since 2016, like since all of the Larry Nassar charges were brought out. And there's, I think, a lot of positives from that. I think there's also the potential drawback that a lot of the people who actually experienced what that was like to see the university go through that, as much as I have a lot of opinions and the community had different opinions about then President Louisiana Simon, she was actually at Nassar's trial. Like, she actually heard those women and girls testify and heard their statements. Like, there is a visceral understanding that comes with having like experienced that and been part of the university for that, as much as I think there was a lot of ignorance that went on, weaponized and otherwise, with those people in positions of leadership. They also experienced it. And so I think that's something that I really hope with, having a new president, having a new athletic director, having a new football coach, having a completely different board of trustees compared to the late, 2010s. Like, I hope we don't lose how hard it was for Michigan State, any university, any community to experience that, while also, holding to the new standards they have set to make Michigan State a campus, a community that every student feels safe, that they have equal access to every educational, program and activity. And it's something that, depending on how you look at it, like, I see this as an opportunity for Michigan State to pick up a coach who's actually like felt the rubber meets the road of really awful circumstances happening, and being able to learn from that and carry that forward. So that's something that I honestly really hope that Bat and Fitzgerald, maybe address more moving forward. I think Fitzgerald has kind of indirectly, like in his ESPN College Game Day podcast, but then also like some of the media statements of just like he's said, like he's just learned a lot from that. Sounds like it's impacted like how he talks to his own family about how you treat other people. And I think it's something that he's going to carry forward to the Michigan State team. I would love for them to come out and just, maybe like make some sort of statement, or just make it really clear, like, this is what Michigan State, in light of our history, is doing moving forward. And maybe that's way too much to ask for. And I think a lot of that is already in place. There's a lot of really good policy that's constantly every year being updated. Just this July, Michigan State came out with, increased clarification on a lot of their Title IX related policies of like what defines sexual harassment, what defines sexual assault, how they're going to go about investigating cases with like actual timely responses. So I think there's just a lot of protections already there in place, which just give me a lot more confidence. And I think depending on how you look at it, this is actually, rather than picking up a coach who's never experienced that, who's ignorant to a lot of those issues, like, for better or for worse, Fitzgerald knows the pain that comes with that and is poised to actually, I think, be able to do some pretty cool stuff on and off the field with this football program.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously there's a lot more we could talk about for that. And like,
ending on a weighty discussion, but I just
important.
think it's important. Yeah, for sure.
And there's going to be a lot more conversations about Pat Fitzgerald and this football team and this athletic department in the coming weeks. Don't expect football news to really slow down,
No.
even though the season has been over for a week. There's going to be coaching hirings. The transfer portal opens
Yeah, we
up
didn't even
in
talk
a
about
couple
that.
weeks, but we'll make sure to keep you guys up to date.
As much as we can.
We don't want to give you 2-hour episodes
Yes.
every week.
I know. I fully started recording this thing and like this is gonna be like a 30-minute episode. We're gonna be so quick.
Not possible.
Nope, not with me over here. Oh gosh. Thanks for joining us, guys. We're so glad that you're here. We will be back next week with another episode. We'll be breaking down the Penn State game, breaking down women's basketball, and
More football news.
potentially whatever other bombs that J-Bat wants to drop on us between now and then. As always, go green,
Go white,
go
state.
state.